hear many stories about the residential school system and what many of my people went through. It tears at my heart when I hear these stories, and many times I am reduced to tears. There is another group of people who were sent away to school during the 1960s and made to live in boarding homes in the cities. I am one of those people. I call us the forgotten children. I was sent away when I was 13 years old. I know many people in the residential schools were sent away when they were mere babies. So at 13, I feel that I was old enough to have been okay. Our next generation is affected by what happened years ago, long before they were born. There are so many stories from so many children. This is my story. Until age 13, I grew up in Caboni on the Wukumkong unceded Indian reservation on Manitoulin Island. Usually a reserve has only one Catholic church, but our reserve is very big and we had four. My grandma and my mother taught me how to pray. I was baptized and I had my first communion. When I was sent away to North Bay, I quickly forgot my prayers and the church. While living on the reserve, we lived out in the bush in a one-bedroom home. My mom raised us and my father supported us, although he had to move away to get a job. We had no electricity or running water. My older brother came home one day from school and asked my mom, "Why can't we just touch the wall and make the lights go on?" She told this to my dad, so eventually he built a two-bedroom home with electricity. He also bought a black and white television, and a whole new world opened up for us. Hockey night in Canada was a big night in our home. We spoke only English at home because when my dad was 13 years old and he went to look for work, no one would hire him because he could not speak English, only his native tongue. It was then he promised himself that when he had his own children, he would only speak to them in English. But when my parents spoke to each other, it was in Ojibwe. My older brother picked up his language at school during recess from the other native children. I can understand my language and say the words perfectly in my mind, but something happens when I speak. They don't sound like they should. I am learning my language today from my mom, but she says I speak English Ojibwe. In 1968, when the Pontiac High School in Wakamkong was closed, many children were sent away. My two older brothers, my older sister, and I were sent away to live and go to school in North Bay, Ontario. My younger sister was 10 and she stayed home. We were separated to live in different boarding homes. This was another form of residential schooling. I lived in 9 different boarding homes with 7 just in the first year. It was the loneliest time of my life and I cried every day. That loneliness still lives in the depths of my being and impacts me. It has molded me into the person I am. The first home I lived in did not work out. There was no lock on my bedroom door, and in that house I was vulnerable. There was a chess box in my room, so at night I shoved it against the door. One morning the lady of the house said to me, "My husband bought you a pack of cigarettes. They are on the table." As young as I was, I knew it was a bribe, and yes, I had already started smoking at that young age. I did not accept the cigarettes and kept using the chess box against my bedroom door. So they were mad at me, and I was moved to another place around the corner. The people in the first house stopped me one day on the street and told me they knew where I was living and they were watching me. I was terrified living in that neighborhood. The second place I lived in was with a family of 8 children, all under the age of 10. All they needed was a housekeeper and a babysitter. Eventually, I was moved into another home where there were other native children, which was good because we looked out for one another. And on weekends, all the native students hung out together. There was one restaurant that would not allow native students, but another restaurant welcomed us as long as we spent money. So we would buy french fries and pop. There was a lot of drugs and alcohol around. The older native students wouldn't give us younger ones any, but we always found ways to get some for ourselves. There were many deaths and suicides amongst my native brothers and sisters. Most of the boarding places only took you in for the money they would get for giving you shelter and food. There was a lot of abuse, sexual or otherwise. Some needed babysitters, while others needed maids. I needed a mother who I could talk to. There were things happening to my body that I did not understand. Since I couldn't talk to the people I boarded with, I made an appointment with the doctor. From then on, whenever I had a question, this is who I would talk to. Eventually, when I was in grade 10, I found a home that I could call home. By that time, my spirit had been crippled, damaged, and wounded. I lived there for a year and a half and came to love these people. When I had my firstborn, I went back and introduced them to each other. Manitoulin Secondary School was built in Chaging on Manitoulin Island when I was going into grade 11, but I did not want to go home anymore. By then, I had lost my connection with everyone and everything I had known. I did, however, make a decision to move back for grade 12. After being gone for 3 years, it felt strange to be back home again. I was glad to be home to share at least 1 year with my younger sister before she walked into the spirit world. She was killed by a drunk driver. This was a tragic event that I allowed so much bitterness, anger, and hatred to live in my heart and soul. An unwanted guest. I knew he was there, sitting, listening, watching. I could feel him, hear him, almost touch him. I didn't want him there. I wanted him to go. Who are you? I wanted to shout. What do you want? Leave me alone, I cried. But I was afraid, and he just sat there quiet, an unwanted guest in the shadows of my mind. I carried this around inside me for many years. Eventually, I was able to accept forgiveness into my life. Today, I know the prayers of my grandparents helped me through this. The forgiveness in my heart was planted there when I was a child. This brings us to my grandmother's honesty, bravery, and love. Grandmother honesty. Honesty is to be honest with ourselves and to let go of all that hinders our growth. Grandmother honesty is the butterfly that teaches us life is a continuous metamorphosis. If we are honest with ourselves, removing our own caterpillar guise, we too can become free as the butterfly. Grandmother bravery. Bravery is to face the obstacles in our path and to be able to forgive not only others but ourselves. The hummingbird teaches us of bravery. She will go up against a bear if the bear is threatening her babies. The hummingbird will attack the bear with her long, needle like beak until the bear retreats. Grandmother love. Who better to teach us about love than a child? With their hand reaching out to us, they accept us with their unconditional love. Even though I had returned home, I could not find my way back to the very core to who I was. I was only home for a year before I graduated and left for the city, where I tried to blend into the dominant society, but I never found a place where I felt good about myself. I was lost both spiritually and emotionally. It wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started to pray again. I just started speaking to my Creator in my home and my work. My Creator, in His great love for me, saw this, and He opened the way for me to get back in touch with who I am and where I come from as an Anishinaabemowin. Today, He is leading me gently back to my culture, my heritage, and my people. He is doing this through my art. My art and faith have become integral parts of my self-discovery. One of my report cards from elementary school read, Zoe has no idea what she's doing in art. I probably didn't know what I was doing, but I remembered that report card for the longest time. Today, when I share art with children, I always tell them to have fun and to let it take them wherever it wants to. I have always loved art, but I was afraid to show my work to anyone because of the negative comments I received as a child. With encouragement from many people, especially my mom, I eventually started painting on a daily basis. My husband organized my first art show with two other Native artists in 1982. It was very successful and it felt very good. It was at these early shows that I was forced to open my mouth and speak for myself. I asked my Creator to help me to speak to people. I would get so tongue-tied and shy, but I did not want to be this way. It is through my art that the Creator has given me my voice. I have been invited to schools, clubs, museums, and churches to speak before many people. Grandmother Truth. The eagle has become for the Anishinaabe a symbol of truth and strength. Therefore, holding an eagle feather in our hand gives us a huge responsibility for our voice. I have shed many tears on my road back to finding myself. When I first met my husband, I didn't know how to hug. I never hugged my dad. When my mom was visiting, I desperately wanted to tell her that I loved her. It took me a long time to say it because I kept choking inside. Finally, I was able to tell her, Mom, I love you. She answered back, Me too. Since then, every day I have told her this. Some days are difficult, but I keep talking to my Creator in my own way. It is hard not to be accepted by your own people for what you believe, but I could not forget the prayers of my grandmother and what she taught me. In a painting I did about a sweat, there is a grandmother and a child present. We have to heal and love the child within us so that we are able to live our life to the fullest. An elder told me that sometimes it takes a lifetime to heal. Grandmother humility. As we enter our space to be in union with our Creator and Mother Earth, we open our inner doorway to our own sacredness that is beyond our understanding. Growing up, I used to think of my pain and what I went through. I never once thought about the pain my mother went through when four of her children were taken away from her during the 60s scoop. I asked my mother recently about this. She said, We wanted you all to have a good education. I have so much respect for my mother and what she went through. She must have been very lonesome for us and very anxious. She cried for us, just like I did for her. Grandmother respect. The fire teaches us respect. We can cook our food and it lights up our night. But fire can also destroy if proper care is not given. When I lost my younger sister, my world went into a long, dark hole. I almost lost myself, but I am very thankful and grateful I did not stay there. The death and time of my sister's death stayed with me. Every month, I hated that time. I was pregnant with my first daughter when my sister was killed. My daughter was born on the same day of the month and exactly the same time of night as my sister's death. I was confused and questioned why. Why was my little girl born the exact time my sister died? I went to see my grandmother and asked her the question. My grandma told me that my daughter was born at that same time so that I would begin healing and not be afraid. I would no longer say, My sister has been gone for 6 months. Instead, I would say, My baby girl is 1 month old today. I stared at my grandma in awe. She had so much wisdom to impart. Grandmother wisdom. The turtle teaches us wisdom. We seek wisdom from our elders, but yet sometimes wisdom comes to a child if we remain open to hear the voice of our youth. I was asked to do a painting of our native sisters who are missing or have been murdered. I did not want to do it, as so many images flooded my imagination. I did not want to look at it. It was scary. It was horrible. I just put it out of my mind. Then something happened. The spirit in my life opened my mind. I saw beautiful Native women. They were radiant. They were confident as they moved. They held their heads high. Their long black hair was blowing in the wind. They were reaching for the sky with their dreams. No one told them they couldn't. They were ballerinas, writers, models, waitresses, actresses, but they were also our sisters, our aunties, our nieces, our moms, our granddaughters, our girlfriends, all who had gone missing. I did that painting to honor and to remember our fallen sisters. We will remember that they walked this earth in beauty and in strength. They will never be forgotten. It was sunrise as I started my walk. I followed a small beaten path into a very deep and dark forest, but I was not afraid. I knew you were with me. You promised. The air in the forest smelled so fresh and clean this morning, just like after a rain. Sweetgrass, sage, and cedar filled the air. Exhausted, I stopped and rested among the tall, dark trees. Sunlight was filtering in as I picked up my drum and sang for you. Old Anishinaabeg songs spilled out into the air as I sang to the mountains, to the birds, to the flowers, and to the trees. Songs of thanksgiving for the wind and for the rivers. I sang for my little brothers and sisters as they scurried around me that morning in the bush. Songs for my ancestors and generations yet unborn. Elation filled my spirit as one by one each grandmother came and sat by my side. First there was love, then honesty, followed by trust, humility, and bravery. Finally, respect and wisdom. It was in this exhilarating moment, yet a moment so private, so peaceful, so filled with love, that I first met me, an Anishinaabe Kwe.